I'm just looking for a really quick confirmation that you do see the screen with Acadians. Thank you. Appreciate that, Abe. My name is Elisa Dorman. I am the president of Acadians Learning, but I am also an educator and a user of the assessment. Joining me is my colleague, Eric Howie, Vice President of Customer Success. Together, we are going to share information today, more of a general overview of Acadians, given that many of you have experience with or know the assessment. I want to just go through some confirmations for the team there at Connecticut Department of Education, as well as for you at the local level. So please feel free to use chat at any point in time. We'll be monitoring that and we'll be responding as those chats come in. I'll try to monitor while presenting and include that information verbally. If there's a resource that we want to drop, you can note that we'll put that into chat as well. So there is a handout for today, and I am going to take just a moment I didn't really have that ready, and I would like to go ahead and source that. Maybe I will ask Eric if he would be willing to take that from the email and download and attach the handout. So we'll work on that. So first, Acadians Reading K6 is one of the assessments offered through Acadians Learning. The assessment, Acadians Reading K6, is intended to be a set of individual skill-aligned measures that support the development of reading in the earliest grades and through elementary school to help us be able to see which students are on track and which students may need more support. So they are able to identify those who may be at risk, which aligns with your policy initiative, to be able to target the instructional supports that would be needed for those students in order to reduce risk and get back on track. Acadians Reading K6 is also a set of monitoring forms that allow you to check students' progress in response to intervention that they're receiving. And it also allows systems to be able to review the general effectiveness of instruction at multiple levels or tiers across the organization or across the district. So there are some key features of Acadians Reading, and many of these apply to all of the Acadians assessments in that we design them to be prevention-oriented or focused. In other words, we want to be able to support students to achieve outcomes. And in order to do that, we needed to be able to catch them early so that we could prevent risk from occurring. We also believe that Acadians is a contributor to a much more comprehensive system, which we'll go over in a moment. It is one part of that overall system. Acadians Reading serves as a set of indicator measures, meaning we're going to measure important, big bang for the buck kind of skills that students would be needing to demonstrate mastery in order for us to know that they are on track to be a healthy reader. So there are many things we could measure, but we're going to focus on the ones that are the most predictive and generalizable to the skill set. We're also going to align to what students should be receiving through instruction so that the teaching and learning aspect is what we're measuring and that the assessment is contributing back into that cycle, allowing educators to be more explicit and more systematic in their teaching and to be able to be thorough in covering all the essential skills. As mentioned before, Acadians Reading is a set of forms that can be used for progress monitoring. So as a progress monitoring assessment, it complements what we use for universal screening in that it allows us to repeat the assessment over time in order to see if students are, again, responding to instruction and intervention and making the progress that was needed to stay on track and or to catch up. We're also going to talk a little bit today about another foundation that is key to Acadians as an assessment system, and that is being able to use the data in a decision-making framework. We use a framework known as the outcomes-driven model, so we'll highlight that briefly today. And in our subsequent follow-up sessions that were mentioned before, October, February, and June, I believe, that we will dig a little deeper into this framework for decision making so that you can understand what data is coming into play at different times of year to be supportive to the decisions that are needed at both the student and system level. And then ultimately, one of the key and probably one of the most foundational attributes to the assessment is we are measuring outcomes, because we know that outcomes are what can drive change both at student and systems level through the instruction and the way that we're delivering and supporting instruction. This is a slide, if you've trained with us before or been in any of our previous presentations, you may have seen. It is one that really represents sort of what we mean when we say prevention focused. What we're showing here is a set of data points from a longitudinal analysis of data that we're using measures like ours in this example, or reading fluency, where we were able to examine how students looked similarly or differently across time. And what you'll notice here is at the very beginning of first grade, when students were given oral reading fluency tasks to perform, students who were on track to become readers and students who were not on track to become readers looked very, very similar. There was not much difference to distinguish them. But what we notice here is that by middle of year and certainly by end of year first grade, there became a noticeable difference in students who went on to be readers on track, healthy, meeting grade level expectations, and those who started to fall behind their peer group. While making progress, that progress was never sufficient to catch up to their peers who were on track and reading in a way that put them at low risk and in a more healthy status of reading development. So we want to be able to catch kids exactly at the moment that we begin to see separation in performance. This is how we remain prevention oriented. We're going to teach thoroughly, we're going to teach explicitly, and we're going to identify students for which that instruction is working and it puts them on the trajectory to meet the outcome, or for students who are falling behind, not responding in the way we expect and need additional supports so that we can quickly put them back on track. As I mentioned, Acadience is an assessment, meaning one only assessment that may be in use within a system. We believe that we can be an important contributor to what we call a comprehensive or school-wide sort of literacy model. When we think about a comprehensive or school-wide literacy model, we know that it includes what we teach. So the choices we make about the materials, the choices we make about the professional learning and training to support the teaching of those materials, and the important sort of standards that we expect students to meet. We also know that assessment or data collection is another part of a school-wide model. It's important that we know how students are responding to particular tasks, whether those are embedded within the curriculum and we're seeing how they're managing and mastering what they're being taught there, or whether they're external to the curriculum and they're more generalizable in the sense that we're looking at outcomes and what students need to know. This is where we contribute, is in the area of assessment. We also know that there are other contributors that are important to a school-wide model, which are the environment and the resources, sort of things that are scheduling related and or time in towards tasks, that students can be able to be supported in, and the ancillary materials that come into play. All of these things come together to make what we consider to be a comprehensive model. And in that comprehensive model, again, we want to be one component that we believe contributes to the overall effectiveness of what you're trying to do. If we can work together and in tandem in this diagram where we overlap, we should be able to help students achieve what we consider to be the outcome or the target that we're all working and striving towards. So again, what are these measures? What is Acadience Reading K6? Well, these are indicator measures that sort of work in the way that we think about the medical model, where we take students to well-check visits. We often chart in those earliest years of, sort of infancy through toddlerhood. We sort of are measuring the weight and the height of students, sometimes the head circumference, different things are measured because they are generally speaking to the overall health of a child in those early years of development. Well, in the same way, we're using the Acadience measures as indicators of health and well-being when it comes to reading. And so we're looking at different skills at different times that we're measuring across the kindergarten through third grade grade range in this context in Connecticut to find out who's measuring on track and who might need to have some treatment or some more support. So first we do this at the individual student level with the Acadience data, and we think about how is this student doing in response to the skills that we're measuring for this student at this grade and at this time. But we also like to support systems to look at it across different student groups, to continue to look at it like the way we think about height and weight. So we're using it like a temperature, like a quick indicator of whether or not that student is healthy, or this student, or the next student, or collectively all the groups of students that may be reflected in our school system. So we're measuring them consistently, we're measuring them in the same way against the same benchmarks, and we're now not just able to see how every individual student is doing, but we're also able to measure the general health of the system. How are we going to be moving all students? And this is how we can use illustrations like the graph here to look where you see many students here are represented in the red and yellow portions of the graph. We want to be able to use these to help change that picture and to put far more students in what we consider to be the green and or blue portions of this graph, because those mean that the students have met benchmarks and met expectations and are on track to becoming healthy readers. So again, these are some of the ways that Acadience serves as indicators. Each of the Acadience measures line up to specific skills. We like to use a familiar image that many people have used, which is the reading rope. This is an adaptation of Hollis Scarborough's rope, and it is a rope that we like to show how we layer on different measures at different points in time into what's teaching and what skills are being acquired by students, how we are also measuring those. So you look here and you see, for example, that we have listening comprehension, which happens way before school entry. Students begin to understand words spoken to them. They begin to develop their language and be able to use words to communicate. So these are sort of precursor skills, the longest thread on the rope, because those are happening before formal instruction. Then we move into an awareness of sort of phonemic awareness, the sounds that we hear, into the alphabetic principle and phonics, the images, the graphemes that we see, and how we begin to match those sounds, graphemes to phonemes, letters. And then we're able to move through that into pursuing reading in text, text that can be connected, text that can be representative of what it looks like to read accurately and fluently, and ultimately to be reading for meaning, which is what we talk about here with comprehension. So again, for each of those strands of the rope that we know that we're directly teaching or that we're supporting students to acquire the skill, we want to be efficient in measuring those skills. And so you'll see here a table that represents the measures on the right column, the left column, that are the names and acronyms of the measures you'll see in Acadience Reading K6, as well as whether or not it maps to directly a skill that you can teach, or whether it serves as an indicator of risk and fits into the overall comprehensive picture of the student as, again, a developing early reader. And so these are measures that you see that are part of our suite. Next, we talk about the benchmarks, which are a common term used within our assessment. Benchmarks are representative of what we call empirically derived, criterion referenced scores. So they are a target that represents the lowest performance on any given skill I measure that a student needs to achieve in order to be predicted to meet the next goal or target. These benchmarks will have three component parts. One will always be the skill we're measuring. One will be a descriptor of the level of performance. Another will be a reference point to a time, beginning, middle, or end of year. So this is what we call benchmarks and cut points for risk, a framework for interpreting our data. And these, again, are derived through longitudinal studies examining how students score at this point in time and how that student is predicted, again, to score at a future point in time. We have 4 levels of performance in our benchmarks. These levels of performance are outlined here. These are consistent with the way that we have this framework established and have for many years. Sometimes we reference them by the colors that they represent. We have at or above benchmark as a category, with the at benchmark meaning that the student has achieved that lowest level of okay performance. It means that the probability of meeting a future benchmark is in their favor. So they have at least 80% probability or greater of achieving a future outcome or target, a goal, if they meet the at benchmark category. If they move into the above benchmark category, that probability actually increases. So the more above benchmark you are, again, the greater the probability or odds in favor that you will meet the next outcome. Here on the screen, we have this in orange font, but it really represents the color yellow. Yellow just doesn't pop off the page. So we have a below benchmark category that represents a space that is below benchmark, but above the well below space. And in this space, we have students who we end up saying a lot of times are somewhere between 40 to 60% probability of achieving the later target, and somewhere between 40 and 60% of not achieving the later target. So we sometimes call these the 50-50 kids. They're the ones that we don't know the outcome, so therefore they are needing support, and we'll talk about that in a moment, some level of support to ensure a greater likelihood of achieving the outcome. And then last, we have the well below benchmark category, which puts the probabilities very low. The probabilities here are somewhere between 10 and 20% based on the evidence we've examined that student will achieve a later outcome. So these are the students who need the most intensive support that we have to offer. They're the ones that are not likely to achieve it without that level of intensive support. So we will use that framework to reference interpreting the results, but we also want to introduce and remind people that we have something called a reading composite score. The composite score is a compilation of all the measures that are given at a grade and time of year. The combining of those measures into a single score. This composite score happens to be correlated to later outcomes, as well as being a measurement of broad sampling of behavior. So all the measures come together, they're equally weighted to create this composite score. And again, it is the broadest and richest sample of behavior we have. So you can't derive from a composite score exactly where the student has risk in a particular skill. So it's just saying, combining all things we know about the student together, the student is at risk based on the reading composite score, or the student is not at risk based on the composite score. But when it comes to instruction, it is the individual skill measures that allow us to be able to know where we plan and support instruction. So the composite score is usually the first pass through data to understand who's at risk. And the second pass is typically at the measure level to know in what areas the student is struggling so that we can be thoughtful in planning our supports. So again, our benchmarks, whether we're talking about a composite score or the individual measure scores, are useful in 2 ways. One, they represent predictions. So based on the student's performance at this time, they are predicted to perform a certain way later, and therefore it allows us to know how to address support along a continuum to determine if just general core instruction is enough or if they need strategic or intensive supports. It also serves as the creation of a goal or a target, a place that we are going to work towards achieving so that we are able to monitor progress against what we'll call an aim line to see if students are adequately improving or if we need to make an adjustment or course change in the support that we're giving. So this is what it looks like somewhat in a picture. So here are the sort of green and blue zones represented here. This is the at or above benchmark ranges. We're saying if a student lands here, odds are or probability is in favor of them achieving a later goal or target. So we just need to keep giving adequate explicit, systematic, instruction in the tier 1 or core support. What happens here in this range, and you'll notice this range is fairly small and tight. This is the range where we had about those 40 to 60% odds or probabilities of achieving later subsequent targets. And so this is the group that needs a level of strategic support. That might be differentiation within the core. It might be a level of supplement beyond the core in small group. But these students need some additional help in order to achieve or have likelihood to achieve the outcome. And then at the lower end here, you'll see the category that is well below the benchmark. These are the students who have not much probability of achieving without odds are not in their favor, so they won't achieve those subsequent outcomes without some level of intensive support, some level of treatment that would be provided to them. So the way our benchmark framework works is that it allows us to be able to see at the beginning of a year where students fall within these ranges. It allows us to use a goal, the benchmark that we've talked about, so where we place that benchmark into a range of scores, and it allows us to take those students who are in that well below benchmark category. It allows us to chart a course for them using the goal at the end and the aim line that you see here to be able to see how students are tracking week over week, month over month across the year, because our goal is to take the students who fall in this range of risk and really improve their odds by spoiling that prediction. So that's a little bit of the background of Acadience, sort of how it came to be and why we believe that it's a good instrument or tool to meet the initiatives in Connecticut. What we'd like to do now is just for users confirm the administration options for administering the assessment. So we want to say there are two types of assessment materials that we've referenced already. One set of materials are the benchmark materials. One set of materials are the progress monitoring materials. All of these materials across the forms are equal in difficulty. We just separate and segment dedicated forms to the benchmarking and dedicated forms to the progress monitoring. So when we talk about benchmark assessment, our recommendation is that students be assessed 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end. This is like the well-check visit for the reader. We're wanting to see at the beginning of the year, are they coming into the new grade healthy and on track, or do they need some support? We want to check them again at the middle of the year to see how they're responding to the instruction and if they are still on track or if they need support. And we want to check them again at the end of the year to see if they achieved the intended outcome or the goal. If not, then we want to be able to appropriately apply supports through summer and maybe into the beginning of next year. So this is how our benchmark assessment system works. All students take the benchmark assessment at the grade in which they are assigned. This is the measuring stick for that grade level's expectations. So all students take the benchmark assessment at the grade in which they're assigned. Progress monitoring means for students who need to be supported with strategic or intensive supports, we want to be able to monitor if those supports are actually having positive impact. And so our progress monitoring forms allow us to determine the frequency of monitoring every week, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever it needs to be. And it also allows us to pick the materials in which we need to monitor, and materials should be matched to the place in which students are being supported in instruction. So while benchmarking is at grade level, progress monitoring can be above, at, or below the grade level, depending on the individual need of the student. And so these are the two types of assessments. When it comes to materials, all of the materials needed to administer Acadience Reading are online and available for free download at our website, acadiancelearning.org. So you can get the student-facing materials, that's what you see here, the ones that students would interact with. You can get the assessment manual. This is how assessors would understand and know how to administer and score measures. There's a lot more information in the manual than just that. So lots of other chapters on interpreting the data, on setting up good logistics for benchmark and progress monitoring assessment periods, some additional practice in the appendices, the pronunciation guide. So the assessment manual is there also. And then for assessors who are scoring paper pencil, if you choose that method of administering and scoring, then you'll be also able to download materials that would allow you to score alongside the student as the student is responding. But we also offer digital administration. That means that you'll still download the student-facing forms so that the student has stimulus to respond to, but that the tablet or the Chromebook or the Android tablet, whatever you're using, iPad, I guess I should have said was the other one, you can score along there in lieu of paper and pencil, and it will automate the scoring and the syncing of the data into the data management system. So we have this available for all measures. So you have choices on administration method, paper, pencil, or digital, and we offer the same data management service to be able to warehouse that data and to be able to report that data. Next, we wanted to be able to just show you some of the data views and the data reports that you will find inside of the system, Acadience Learning Online. Before I move on in looking at the data reports, I'll pause and just see if you have any questions. I'll check chat about just the general purpose of the assessment or about the access to the materials for the assessment or any questions up to this point. Okay, I do not see any, so we will keep going. All right, so moving on, let's see. We have the next section is really intended to highlight some of the reports out of the data management system that would be supported to you as educators from the classroom level to the building level, even up to the district-wide sort of view. This is something we mentioned before, that all of our data is really centrally placed into a framework that allows you as educators to be empowered to use the data. We use a model called the outcomes-driven model. This model is comprised of 5 steps. You may have your own decision-making model, and we certainly fit within other frameworks. This just happens to be ours. It includes the steps of identifying the need for support, validating when necessary that need, planning and implementing support, evaluating and monitoring that support, and then ultimately reviewing the outcomes. So you'll see here on the graphic that we have those same 5 steps placed into the graphic, where first, at the top, you'll see the benchmark assessments. At the lower, you'll see the progress monitoring assessments. So you use different assessment forms during different parts of the framework. And let's begin by saying, first, you will administer the benchmark assessment. And that benchmark assessment will be administered, and you'll go through this entire cycle once in the first semester of a school year. The first step was identify if you have students who have needs. So you're basically sifting and sorting your list of students. And then you're validating, checking any score that looks curious. You can administer again the Acadience assessment through an alternate form, or you can use other data to validate. But then you move into the spot you'll see here on the graphic where now you're into planning the support based off the benchmark data. And as you plan that support and implement that support, you'll use your progress monitoring forms to give feedback on whether or not that data that you're seeing is saying, keep going, this is working, or whether the data says there's something you might need to change here. Changes could be size of group, frequency of the meeting, what you're teaching. It could be a lot of variables that you can change, but you'll spend time in that cycle, and then you'll come back up to the top for step 5, back at your next benchmark period, which would now be middle of year. So you've taken one semester from beginning to middle, and you've gone through all 5 steps. And at the middle of the year, you're saying, how did we do? Did we move more students to benchmark? Did we see response to the treatments that we implemented? So you're looking at general health of the students as well as general health of the system. And then the data you collect at the middle of the year becomes step 1, and you use that data again to become step 1, and then you cycle through middle to end all over again. And so this is our framework. And the reason we take time to explain it is because our reports are designed to help you answer questions that we've outlined here that follow those 5 steps and that ask you the important things to be focused on at each of these steps. And we have reports that align to each of these steps. And so we want to be sure that you have this as a takeaway, our framework for decision making. Some examples of reports are our benchmark overview report. This is really an aggregate view of a certain set of data. So you'll see this at the classroom level. So teachers would see this distribution as a classroom teacher. Building level leaders can see this across an entire grade for all classrooms in their building, so they can see the aggregate view of health of an entire grade. System level users, or like the district level leadership, can see this across all buildings within the district and across a singular grade within that district for comparisons. So you can get the district health as well as every individual school's health. And so what this distribution again shows you is aligned to our benchmark framework. It will show you those cut points, and it will show you those color codes that allow you to know where students fall with the level of need for support. When you interact with this digitally, this has a sort of hover feature with a pop-up. When you print it, it will have all of the data here that tells you the number and percent of students that fall within each of those cut points or ranges. The next view we wanted to show is one that is a student list view. Again, we use the pill here as an illustration of the various benchmark cut points. The color codes line up with that framework we talked about. You can see for every student and every time of year where students fall. We also include a reference to our normative framework, which is really our approach to growth percentiles, which is in the Pathways of Progress column. And for every single student, you can customize and set an individual goal, or the system will also set an initial goal. So this is just another view of data that allows you to be able to answer a different set of questions. For every student, you can drill down and you can see the measures that were given at any grade at a different time of year, the performance on those measures, the scores. You can also see that across time. So this is just another view where you can see the students beginning, middle, and end of year in a view. You can also drill down from there to see individual student responses when you score digitally. You can see the item level details. You can see which items they got wrong. This just continues to refine the way that you can analyze data. If you are using paper pencil method, you're simply doing a drill down inside the scoring booklet. If you score digitally, you can drill down inside of the application. We also have another important report or view that really helps educators understand how effective instruction was for a group of students between 2 periods. So I'll just lightly show you here. This is a comparison of data, a matched cohort beginning to end of year. We can see that of all the students who started the year at the red zone, well below the benchmark, this is how that group of students redistributed across time and to the end of the year. So we have about 36% of students who made it all the way up to benchmark, We have another 45% of the students that moved up a tier or up a level. And so they made progress. And we have only here about 18% that stayed in place. So we can say that for this particular illustration, we moved 80% of students from a level of risk out of that level of risk up to the next level or 2 levels above. And because of that, that means whatever treatments they were giving are actually catching kids up. They're working. And so we might want to repeat that. And you can see the same here, here, and here, meaning that we moved students who were once in the yellow zone all the way to the green and or blue zone. We maintained students in the green zone or moved them up to the blue zone. We maintained students in the blue zone at either the green or the blue zone. So this is a representative picture of what effective instruction across all tiers would look like. Here again are just some other ways to look at data. They look similar because we use the half donut, but this is comparing for a systems view. This would be like a building level view where we would say, here's my grade level at my school. This is what we look like as a grade level, grade 1, but here's every individual teacher's classroom across the building. And so as an instructional leader, it allows me to see where we're making greatest gains. It can allow me to see where I might need more professional development, more coaching or mentoring, because I can see comparison across classrooms. And again, this is just showing that we can filter data in different views to allow us to see change again over time. You know, students who started in the red zone end up in levels above all the way. And so these are just different ways to slice, dice, and view data. Here's another just a report that sometimes we find educators want and find valuable is a way to summarize the data and share that data with parents. So these are just some of the reports that we have in the data management system that allow for you to be able to be responsive to the questions that data might pose and to be able to hopefully answer those questions so that you can action on the data within the system, whether that be the district, the school, or even into a classroom. And with that, I've checked for comments. I don't see any in the chat yet. So I would like to introduce and hand over to my colleague, Eric Howie, and he's going to take us through the next few slides.
Very good. Thank you, Elisa. Yes, so we wanted to make sure that before the access session that we were letting you know the different ways in which there is support kind of built into either built into the platform or built into conversations that are available to you. So generally speaking, like when we're working with folks that are ready to get started with us, where we can talk to you before you get started through that process. We can support you through rostering and also kind of through training. Now, I know a lot of you are probably past that point and you're already started, but I would say that if any of your local context changes, to be sure to reach out and see kind of how we could support that. So if you need to be rostering in a different way, or if you have staff that need to be accessing data in a different way, we're happy to support you through that. And then throughout the year, as staff are giving the benchmark and progress monitoring administration, there's a series of different supports that we have available to you, and we'll kind of show you how to access some of these. But they do include like our help desk. We have a help center that's full of articles. We have videos and so forth. So there's going to definitely be things that are available to you. And so we're happy to be included in these the series of sessions hosted by the STE. We did want to just call out that if you have a need that is maybe like to go deeper or to go something that's more comprehensive, that there are some training options that are available through Acadience as well. And so our workshops are really kind of, we have 3 different kinds of workshops. We have Essential, which is really for people to get into very deep into what the measures are, how to administer them. And we recommend that anyone that is assessing should go through this training. We have a data interpretation training. And then for those that want to build local capacity, we have what we call like a mentor track where we can build mentors. So those would be folks that go through the essential and data interpretation trainings, but then get some extended supports and extended access to materials and so forth that would allow them to become a local resource, someone that can answer questions locally. And then if you need, and then they would be able to turnkey training to staff as needed for new staff or as refreshers are needed. We provide training through asynchronous learning, so like online self-paced workshops. We also do live trainings, whether that's coming to you or doing that over like Zoom. And just to call out that if you're not new to Cadence, we do have a refresher workshop as well.
Sorry.
So Oh, no, absolutely. And so we have several embedded resources that once you're in ALO, you have access to. So when you log into ALO, you're probably often clicking the My District to get to some of those reports that Elisa was showing. Right next to that is the resources icon. And when you click on that, there's kind of several different things that are available to you. The first thing is the student materials. So if you need some additional materials or you need to replace the materials, you can always download them from there. The next tab over is where there are videos. So those are really great, like quick instructional videos that are good for reminders. So maybe if it's like a measure that is introduced at the middle of the year and it's just been a little bit of a while since you've given it or since you've received training on it, you can go back to that video and it's going to go over the reminders and the scoring rules and the prompts and everything that you would need to know to kind of give that measure with fidelity. And then don't forget that we have a help center here. So if you click on that, it'll take you to our help center, and there's going to be quite a few articles, and some of the articles are there to really support understanding and answer questions about the assessment. And then there's also a section around ALO, so it'll cover questions around like what are the report views that are available, how do I navigate through them, what are the different functions and features, kind of like the parent report that are built in. So
I'm sorry, it stuck for just a moment. There we go.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then also, once you get into the resources page, you'll have the option to select two different things. There are two different apps that you might be interested in. And really, they're kind of progressive web apps, so you're not downloading from like an app store or anything. But they'll just run natively through the browser. And one of them is the ALO app, and that is what you would be installing to do the online assessments. And then there's the training app, which will allow you to click in and just practice. So if you're looking for a place to practice new measures or kind of get back in for the school year, that's a really great place to go. And then you can always reach us at the info@acadiancelearning.org that goes directly into our help center. And then our website is acadiancelearning.org. And from there, you'll get to you'll get the pages for like Acadience Reading. And then under that resources, you'll get to our help center. And then you'll also see options for training. I think with that, I think we're ready for any sort of questions that folks may have.
And from our perspective, your questions can be asked aloud or asked through chat. For many of you, if you've been using, this is a very stable set of measures that you've used in the past, and nothing will have changed really from your experience last year to maybe this year. So you'll find continuity there. But sometimes you have switched from paper pencil to digital and you have some need for support, or sometimes you have large teacher turnover and you need to figure out how to train and support people. So again, any questions that you have now or that you think of in the future, we would be more than happy to answer. I'm going to pause just one more moment. I see Abe is here, so I will let him jump in. I realized it said that our handout did not have share permissions assigned to it. So I'm going to make that edit very quickly, and then I will drop the handouts for the slides into the chat. So I'll need maybe 60 seconds to do that. And then while Abe, you're closing out. Oh, wait, I see. How do you access historical data from previous years? Great question. What if I stop sharing and pull up an example of that for you? Let me log into ALO Live while we're answering that question. And I will see, Eric, can you see if the second one has posted yet? I will. Let's see, log in and show you. This is going to be just a test account, which we call it like a demo account. So it isn't going to have a complete set of data, but I will show you how you are able to access that very quickly. Make sure I'm going to the right image, because I really wouldn't want you to see my very, very messy desktop. I did not clean it up before I was here today. So inside of your district tab, when you're here, you would come into schools and you would either select the school that you wanted if just looking at one school, or if you're the district and wanted to look at all schools, you look at the students tab at the district level, and over in our drop-down menu, one of the drop-downs is to see historical data. And so when you do that, it opens up the distribution graphs that we were talking about, and then it would allow you to select the years to display. Because this is a test account, it only has 1 year of data. But if you had multiple years of data, it would give you each of the a line for each of the years. You would select that or deselect that depending on how many or which years you wanted to see. And then it would display that for you. And what it will do is it will stack that data on top of each other for every grade that you're wanting to look and see. So that's the first place. A new feature release that's coming this fall is that on the desktop here, this menu in this designation for which school year you're viewing data, which is in the upper left, is locked for just a school year, the one that's current. And so when we release the new feature, this will be a menu of some sort that you'll be able to select and see multiple years straight off the dashboard without having to go into deeper into the platform to see the results at different levels within the district. So that is that. Let's see. RAN is new. We use paper pencil. How do we do RAN? Two things I should say about our assessment. Number one, if you have a digital license, it automatically allows you to enter data manually also. So like, for example, in this question, if you want to score digitally all the other measures and then here comes RAN and you're used to doing RAN on paper, you can still do RAN on paper and key in, enter your scores. But if you want to do RAN, we have I'll come back and share here for a moment. I won't be able to launch it because I'm on a desktop and we only are approved for tablets. So in the assess tab here is where you launch most assessments. Right now, RAN isn't launched through here. You have to go into and find a student that you want to administer RAN to, and then you have to pull up, because this is an out-of-date account, meaning it's last year. We haven't rolled it to this year. You go to the student, ASA, that you wanted to test, and there's a dot menu, we call it 3 dots, and it opens up where you can assess RAN. And this is how you would launch RAN digitally. And so that's how you would be able to get to the RAN within a digital administration. And I will stop share again. Let's see what other questions have come up. Thank you, Eric, for sharing that article. Is there an easy way to see the whole school at once rather than one grade at a time? Yes. Yes. I'm going to think about your question and how I can best illustrate that for you. So again, I will share my screen. All right, so I mentioned 2 things. One, hey, Eric, we might also drop the Welcome to ALO link inside the chat if you'd be willing to do that. Here, if you are in a school, I'm going to pick Delight Valley. Once you're in a school, all reports are accessible under the Students tab. Once we're in the Students tab, you'll have a menu, and this account only has 2 grades, grade 1 and grade 4, but I'm going to show you. It's called the Overview Report. So here it will always have the grades that you can select that you want to view. So if I have all selected, it's going to show all the grades in this account, which are grade 1 and grade 4. So it's going to show all grades, all types of measures stacked, like this. So this is my whole school, all teachers and students combined, and I would be able to see the composite and then every single submeasure score underneath that. And then I would be able to see the next grade, whatever it is. In this account, it's 4th grade. So I would be able to see 4th grade, again, all students and all classrooms aggregate view, and I'd be able to see every measure and score type below that. So the overview report here in the menu allows for that aggregate viewing. And then the selection tool here allows you to see all grades in the building or just one grade in the building. Here, when we also do what's called benchmark status, I mentioned that. This is where I'm seeing just one grade here. Sorry, I'm seeing all grades, but one grade here at the top, and then the other grade will be at the bottom. But I would see the I would see the school combined aggregate in the first column, and then I would see every teacher underneath that, and then I would see the next grade, the aggregate for the whole school, and then I would see each classroom below that. So overview is going to combine all teachers, all students, all classes into grade level bands. Status is going to give you the aggregate for the grade level and then every class underneath that. If you're at a school, if you're at a district, it would give you a view of the buildings underneath the district instead of the classrooms. It would give you buildings in this view. So those are, I think, answering those questions. Rather than hop out of here, I think I will just ask if there's another question. But we can't see a K-3 composite together, just in grade bands. Yes, so the reason you can't combine composite score is because the composite score, although it is a sampling and combination of all measures, it isn't the same measures across beginning, middle, and end of year. And so you can't combine it as if it is equal and the same. Whereas like phoneme segmentation fluency is the same all across kindergarten and into the beginning of 1st grade, same benchmark, same metric. Nonsense word fluency, middle of kindergarten to beginning of 2nd grade. It's all the same, like you're working towards, across the same measure, all the same across that period of time. But because the composite changes at every grade and every time of year, you can't combine it all together as if it's the same. So to answer your question, you can't see the composite score for a whole building mushed together as an overview of the whole K-3 space. You have to look at it by grade bands. Other questions? When we come back together at our next learning opportunity, We will come in with this kind of view in mind. What we'll do is we will set up that outcomes-driven model. We will talk about what data has just been collected, and we'll lightly review how you can begin to use and apply the framework of decision-making, the outcomes-driven model, to reviewing data through the aggregate data views as a system and into the individual classroom. And if you're supporting down into classrooms, the individual student level data as well. And we'll do that again after the middle of the year, and we'll do that again after the end of the year. And as we build over time, we'll show you a few more reports that will populate or become meaningful as we have time, data across time to examine. But that will be the goals of our time together, the next 3 planned events. So we look forward to having you back and or supporting your questions then. In the meantime, if you do have questions, as Eric said, please reach out. But also, if you send any of those questions even ahead of future meetings, we'll curate those and add those into the planned presentation so that we can be sure to include examples there as well. If there's no more questions, I will hand it back again to the department.
Thank you, Lisa. I see you all have been doing a great job handling all the questions here, so I don't know. We'll wait for 30 seconds here if you have any more CSDE questions. If not, we'll, I know we're a few minutes over, we'll call it a webinar. So we'll just, any questions, you can drop them in the chat or raise hand and you can certainly ask. Okay, that's a beautiful thing. We'll call it a webinar. Thank you very much again for attending today to everybody. Elisa and Eric, thank you for hosting. We will see you at the first data interpretation workshop in October. Have a good afternoon.